So anyway, as you know, I don't know how to start the podcast. It'll either be whatever we keep from what's been recorded in the last minute and 20 seconds or something along the lines of Welcome to Late to the Movies. My name is Ben Holt. This podcast where me and my friends get to fill in our movie blind spots. Each week, we'll pick a film that either I or a guest hasn't seen before and really should have by now. This week, continuing Pride Month, we've got Moonlight, the 2016-17 Oscar winner for Best Picture. Second lowest grossing Best Picture winner ever. We'll get into all that. Guests left, right, across your podcast dial. We got Patrick.
Hey, everybody.
I said across your Patrick dial. That's not a thing. And Brady.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Before we get into the movie, this is both of y'all's first time on the podcast. So even though I just explained the format to you, I was lying because when it's someone's first time on the podcast, I like to ask, in general, not just if you've seen anything good recently that you want to highlight, but also, what's your relationship with watching movies? Is it a big hobby? Is it more casual? Is it you only did it now for the first time in years? You know, all that stuff.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
First?
Please take it away.
Yeah. So it is a hobby for sure. Was potentially a career thing when I went to grad school. And then I realized there are no jobs once you leave an English department with a doctorate. So I would say it's a deeply involved hobby of mine. And I think like most, like we were talking a little bit before we started recording, also a house kid, watched a lot of movies. Yeah. So, it was like the thing that my family did together. So it kind of took off from there. And like I said, went to grad school for film studies for a bit, and then ended up switching to creative writing, but I still watch a ton. And I work with this gentleman who's going to go next, and this is what we talk about.
Yeah, it's like on Tuesdays, it's like Patrick and I is basically just throwing directors and movies at each other. I'm Brady. I was a film studies major in college. I love movies. Movies are something that, like Patrick, I was going to do it for a career. Unfortunately, the rest of the world doesn't seem to put as much stock and love into movies. But no, I watch movies all the time. While Patrick was talking, I was getting my Letterboxd open because I am pretty obsessed with Letterboxd. And so I just have logged 1,321 movies. My 1,300th movie was The Shining, which would have been a great movie to come on here and talk about because I had never seen it before. But so I love movies. Movies is something I do all the time.
Can you drop that Letterboxd name for people to follow you?
Yeah, it is Skyrunner_7.
Nice.
So yeah, feel free to follow me. Yeah, patron. So I get to change the movie posters. So pretty big deal, you know.
Yeah, and I just have whatever's below that. I don't get to change the movie posters, but it keeps my stats for the end of the year.
Yes,
which is important.
I'm like so stats obsessed. Spotify Wrapped and Letterboxd Wrapped is like the only reason they go in.
And Brady convinced me to resurrect my Letterboxd.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I am chock full of ads at the moment.
Yeah, I like
Not
forgot what it
paying for
looks like
anything.
with ads because it's like
It's weird.
Not great.
not great.
As long as you still get that gremlin when you shake it after midnight. It's
Oh
it's all
yeah,
that
the
matters.
Gremlin is so great. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever gone into this either. I was also had a brief dalliance with maybe doing movies, and then also was like, oh, this isn't a thing you can make money doing. It's so unlikely. I went to a school where a lot of people went into film. It was I went to Emerson, so it was a lot of kids who didn't get into Tisch, and a lot of them ended up moving to Hollywood and like doing stuff. But it's it's a crazy thing to go to school for because the chances of getting your money back on that investment. Eek.
I went to school with a couple guys who like you could just tell that they were like going to work in the industry. They just like were like just a little bit different. And you're like, wow, like, and now they are doing those things, and it's like I'm like so happy for them, but at the same time, I like hate myself for not being like them. But
as I say that, I was there 3 and 4 years after Daniels, who directed Everything Everywhere All at Once.
Oh my gosh,
as far as Emerson goes.
Oh, wow,
Just watched that
cool.
for the first time recently.
I've not seen it. Is it worth a watch?
Oh, it's really good.
I was not a big fan of it.
See, this is what's great though. We got different perspectives, which is really good.
I liked it a lot. Did you see Swiss Army Man?
No, I've not.
That was their previous feature. Have you seen the video for Turn Down for What? Because they directed that too.
The song?
Yeah.
Oh no, I don't. I don't think I've seen any of that.
It's if you want to see if you vibe with their aesthetic, that's like a quick way to find out in 3 minutes.
Interesting.
It's,
Okay. That's
I will say, not that we're here to talk about Everything Everywhere, I thought the performances were great, well-deserved awards for the performances. I feel like it was a little too cute for me sometimes.
It gets there, yeah.
I get that.
When,
one of my favorite.
It's the rocks, probably that might have fallen on deaf ears for you.
What's that?
When they're the rocks.
I didn't mind the rocks
subtitles.
bit.
Oh, okay.
I didn't love the multiverse aspect of it, which is it's something you have to, I think, be into to really enjoy the movie. I feel like it was a bit like, and maybe it's just like superhero exhaustion, but it wasn't. I was expecting a lot more than what it culminated into.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, I thought the performances were great. I just feel like it was, in terms of Oscar winners, maybe not as strong as Moonlight.
Oh,
Well,
Definitely not as strong.
that's a good segue, though.
that is a good segue. We can't go there
ask
yet.
for a better
though.
segue than that.
Unfortunately, we can't take it yet. We haven't all talked about stuff we watched.
That's true.
Bummer. You will just edit.
We'll
This
edit
is
it, yeah.
podcast magic right
Post.
here.
Post. Noted for post.
When a segue comes up organically, it's like, I'm just going to clip that for later.
Yeah, that's it's interesting. It's interesting too because I like multiverses to a certain extent, but I think it's become a little too with like Marvel. You know, I think it becomes like a little bit too much. Speaking of movies that I've recently watched, I recently watched The Amazing Spider-Man 2 for the first time, the Andrew Garfield one. I will say I waited.
Shout out Jamie Foxx.
Shout out Jamie Foxx for a great performance in that. I also like always wonder like how Jamie Foxx gets some of these roles because he is pretty talented, but you know he's always doesn't seem to be like enjoying a lot of like he was in Stealth. Has anyone seen that movie?
The Fired.
The Fighter.
Yeah, he just works. He's just in stuff.
I've not seen the movie Stealth.
I remember the
but
trailer.
Embarrassingly, was an Incubus fan at the time, and they did the soundtrack.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I
It's-
know of the movie.
When I watched it, it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Now, I think as an adult, I don't think I would like it as much, but
That could be a good. So yeah, thinking that that's maybe not one of the stronger to you Best Picture winners. Any particular favorite Best Picture winners or least favorite, least deserving in your head Best Picture?
I mean, I feel like Moonlight is, I think, the strongest of
the last decade,
yeah, I would say so.
I would agree.
In terms of just like,
Yeah.
you know, not kind of like, I think it stands the test of time. Like I've seen it before.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably my fourth time watching it.
Wow.
And still find like more to appreciate on each rewatch. I'm trying to think of I'm not a huge like Oscar person. Like I don't like get caught up in the kind of like the watching
race
it and
kind
everything
of,
like that. I'm trying to think of what else won. What won this year? It was
Oppenheimer.
I was big on the Oppenheimer train.
Yeah.
You know, when I saw Oppenheimer in IMAX at Providence Place, it was like a religious experience because, you know, it was like, this is like one of the only
You
times.
saw the 70 millimeter?
Yeah, I saw the 70 millimeter. And it was just like,
It was good.
I mean, I was almost sad that when it was out of theaters, I was like, I'll never see it like this again, like the way it was intended to be seen. But I really enjoyed it. I think, so you said Moonlight was one of the lower grossing Best Picture winners. Is number one The Hurt Locker still? Yeah. Beat out her ex-husband, James Cameron, at Avatar that year.
That would have not been the lowest grossing Best Picture winner.
Would have been one of the least deserving. I like Avatar. I like James Cameron. This is Patrick and I on Tuesday talking about James Cameron and how I like James Cameron and he doesn't like him as much as I do.
No,
but
I don't.
I was hanging out with some friends last night after we played board games, and we got into a long discussion about the Avatar sequels.
I'm not
sequels?
like yeah,
I'm kidding.
Three and four.
The third one's announced
Sea
date
Bearer.
is
Did the second one come out yet?
Way of Water was awesome. It's the third highest grossing film of all time.
I love the creature. What is it? Pao Kun? What's his name?
Payakon the Rogue Tulkun.
Yes, I
friend.
I love him.
He's my best friend.
Looking at Academy Award winners, like Oscar winners, Parasite is up there for me too.
Not seen it.
I'd say Parasite's
I have it on Blu-ray.
maybe ahead of this for me. But
And No Country. I mean,
My favorite movie of all time. So I feel like.
and then Brady was talking about how much he loves Crash 2006.
Yeah, I'm a huge Crash 2006 guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But I actually wrote my undergrad thesis on No Country for Old Men, so I feel
nice.
like I absolutely love that.
did you conclude with the line like "This is indeed no country for old men"?
No, I actually don't remember how it ended. I'll have to dig it up and let you know. But It's so great. That is probably
one of my
far
favorite
and away.
endings of any movie.
Yeah.
I love how that ends.
Yeah. The book also, I know this is a movies podcast, but if you guys have time to read a little Cormac McCarthy, it's a great book.
Yeah. I was actually thinking watching Moonlight because it's based on a play.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. And I was like, I really want to see the play, although this is a movie podcast, so I'll stick to movies.
It's reminds me a lot of Past Lives in terms of like
Shout out Past Lives, good movie.
yeah, love. I almost said trimester. You're talking about Brady before, of like broken into thirds.
A triptych.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that, not that Past Life started as a play, but Celine Song being a playwright originally, you can see like the really 3-act structure.
Yeah.
And can imagine how that would work on stage.
I think I'm remembering this right, but Moonlight, too, part of the play is that it was all occurring at the same time. So,
Oh, really?
Well, then never mind. That sounds
I'm
cool.
I'm sorry if I'm wrong about this. Don't kill me, but I believe that was the case. Part of it being like experimental theater.
Okay.
That all three, Little, Chirone's, and Black's story all being kind of told simultaneously.
Oh, that's really cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
And like
You
you
can-
kind of like consume it like a painting almost.
Exactly,
It's
yeah.
like all at once.
You can imagine how that would work. And it's cool.
Yeah. I would love to see it. I wonder.
That does sound really cool. Before we get more into Moonlight, is there anything recently anyone wants to highlight that they've seen? Last thing I saw in theaters was Furiosa, but that's like feels almost like old news. So yeah, but
It was a great. You saw with a great group of people though.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I recently also saw The Hitman.
Yeah,
Richard Linklater.
Netflix's own.
Netflix's own. I'm a pretty big fan of his. Patrick and I discuss Boyhood and its merits.
I like Linklater, but I think he's hit or miss for me sometimes.
I think this was not like a miss, but definitely it's like a 3-star movie. Have you?
I haven't watched it yet. I like Glenn Powell a lot.
He's
I
handsome.
wanna check it
There's
out.
no denying it.
He's got a very tiny mouth. I'll just
He does
say
have
that.
a tiny mouth.
Have you? Anyone but you with Sydney Sweeney?
I didn't see it.
That is
but
honestly, if you're gonna watch a Glenn Powell joint, throw that on instead of then Hitman. He's very good in that as well, and it's based off of a Shakespeare play. So it's like there's like cute little references to that as well throughout. So I really like that.
I saw Changeling recently for the first time. I felt like
there you
I was overdue with that. I liked it. I felt like it was appropriately spooky, if not disjointed. But my wife and I did the the Eli Roth's like history of horror thing. So we've been kind of checking off the blind spots that I haven't seen for that. And then we talked about this before. I saw the TV Glow in theaters. So that was probably my last.
Cool shit.
That was my last movie theater experience that I've seen recently. Loved it. Still thinking about that movie. Yeah, really excited to kind of see what they do next for their next feature, because
Me too.
it definitely feels like a direction I hope movies go towards. Kind of weirdly just like strange, weirdly disjointed in some ways.
Specifically speaking to my experience of growing up watching Nickelodeon and being on the early internet.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like it's definitely in the wheelhouse of like any of us who are in our like 30s or older, who like, I wasn't a Buffy fan, but like I've met a ton of people who were huge Buffy fans. I know that was kind of an influence for them in Buffy fandom. And but there's like anything, like just fandom as an idea, and especially something in our society, and then to kind of like pair that with a kind of allegory for trans, kind of like coming out, or kind of speaking of depressing aspects of it, kind of like not accepting that part of you, which I think a lot of that movie's about. It's great movie. Highly recommend it.
I like the performances in it a lot. The two main characters, Justice Smith and Bridget Lundy Page. But I think Fred Durst is awesome in it. He has one line.
Yeah.
But he just kills. He's just such a presence.
He is everybody. He is our generation's neglectful, angry father, for sure.
And I was listening to an interview with Jane Schoenbrunn, the filmmaker. They were talking about how Fred Durst got on set and is just like a big movie nerd and just wanted to talk about like Wong Kar-wai and stuff.
That's cool. Yeah.
But that Fred Durst represents such a specific version of masculinity from the 90s that they wanted to represent as the kind of oppressive force, that just having him there, just looking disapproving.
Yeah. Just sitting
so
on the
powerful.
couch in the room alone.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch this because this,
really good.
the scene.
It's an experience. Like I say that kind of wholeheartedly. Like it's unlike a lot of other narrative films. I'm glad it was in theaters too. It's like the type of movie that I'm glad
they got A24 money to build blow out their stuff.
Exactly.
Cool. Let's get into the movie. This time's Moonlight. I, while watching it, realized I hadn't actually seen Moonlight fully before.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I count for this episode as being late to the movies. But how about y'all?
I had seen it, and I really don't remember a lot of it either. I think I had seen it kind of like at a viewing, in college. So I feel like I wasn't probably the best movie going experience. So I felt like I got a lot more out of it with this watch for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I saw it twice when it came out, and then once for a class when I was in grad school. Shortly after it came out, and then so this was my fourth time watching it. It's been like, I don't know, it's been like 6 years since I saw it.
Wow.
Great. So then we do like a 1-minute plot summary. Anyone is eligible if anyone feels like throwing one out.
I'm also happy to jump in if you need me to.
Yeah. Do you want to do it? You've seen it 4 times. I feel like you should have
sure.
Yeah,
So it's a story told in 3 parts. It's a triptych about one character who kind of has 3 different names in the movie: Little, Chiron, and Black. So this character, you follow each version of him, so to speak, at a different age point. So you're kind of moving through his kind of understanding of himself being gay, his acceptance or kind of lack thereof, and then his final kind of reconnection with really like human intimacy in some ways. So, that's a kind of a bad summary of it, but I feel like you're kind of, he grows up in Miami. So the first 2 parts of the movie take place in Miami. When he's really young, you sort of come in on him being bullied, hiding from other kids who are bullying him. He doesn't quite understand why. He connects with a drug dealer in the neighborhood who kind of acts like a father figure to him, and whose girlfriend acts like a mother figure. You learn that his mother is a drug addict. And that is partially why he refuses to go home. He's very plays things close to the chest. As you move on to Chiron, you see him in high school. You see him kind of still dealing with bullying in classes and things like that, and kind of coming to a point where really him needing to stick up for himself coming to a head, which culminates in Kevin, who is kind of his love interest in the movie, having a first sexual experience with another man on the beach one night. And then later on, shortly thereafter, one of the bullies in schools essentially coerces Kevin into beating up Chiron. And then you jump ahead a certain number of years. He now goes by Black. He's living in Atlanta. He himself is a drug dealer. And then he talks to his mother, who's now in rehab. She apologizes, and then he decides to reconnect with Kevin after getting a phone call, who is now a line cook, still in Miami. So the film kind of culminates in the 2 of them finally reconnecting. And yeah, it's a very, I think, tonally, that's where it kind of ends, on this kind of like somewhat hopeful, debatably hopeful note. But yeah, is that good? Is that a minute? A little bit more?
Yeah, that's perfect. I think so. For the most part, throw out anything you want for main points or key takeaways or highlights, but sometimes it's helpful to structure it as if you hadn't seen it before or you hadn't seen it in a while, what's jumping out to you? What are you surprised about? What wasn't like you expected? So for me, watching this for the first time fully, the immediate thing that jumps out is the camera work and how much it's moving. And then the performances, especially in the first section with Mahershala Ali as Juan, is just some next level stuff on both like the highest form of the craft you can do. Just about, it's so good.
Yeah, I had actually had taken some notes. Right here, I'll do the page sound and post, so you can think I added a lot. But I was like, I noticed, especially with Little, that there's a lot of panning going on. Especially like that first like dinner. The camera's like constantly moving, like Little doesn't like seem to have a place. And I think the depth of field is like cranked way up, even as the movie progresses and he gets older and older, it's like you are with this character because you cannot see almost anything outside of like the two people that are talking or the people that are on screen.
Right.
The few times that you can, I think like they're like jarring, when he's driving with Juan in the car, you like get the full picture. And I feel like that as like the first time he can see outside of his own experience is like kind of how I took it. But yeah, the camera work, it's like this constant motion, especially like in this like dinner scene and everything like that. So yeah, I made like notes about that constantly because I was just like, I hadn't realized or I hadn't paid attention to the first time when I watched, and it really stuck with me for sure.
Like you said, you find new takeaways every time you've watched it. I definitely want to watch it again sometime, hopefully soon, because there was so much about just surface level that's pretty dazzling that I'm sure there would be more meaning that sinks in on repeat viewings.
Yeah, I was thinking on that note of camera work when Kevin goes up to Little after they're playing that football game, and that kind of like tumbling, when they kind of like play fight, flirt with each other, like the camera work for that is, I think, brilliant, because it's like, it's hiding somehow, like the cinematography is heightening the eroticism of that playing.
Yeah.
And kind of almost shooting it as if it were like an intimate sex scene, not really, but kind of the disjointedness of it works for, I guess, being in Little's, as close as you can in Little's mind, or what you can imagine he's experiencing in that moment.
Yeah.
And then there's that scene where he kind of holds his cheek and looks at the cut. And there's just like the brief pause, and Kevin looks at him and says like, "Oh, you're weird," and it's like, and I think that's the first moment where you kind of, obviously you hear about the movie or you see advertisements or trailers and stuff, but that's the first moment I think of the movie where you understand a little bit of Little's interiority, outside of just fear. Right. Yeah. And then you kind of contrast that with the beach scene with Jharrel and Kevin. And obviously, like, I just remember the kind of the sand, like him playing with the sand and gripping the sand and things like that. And it's like such a beautiful image. And so, yeah, I didn't, for me this time watching it, I think I was really Paula as a character, like his mother, was really invested in that and his relationship with his mom, and also her relationship with Mahershala Ali's character. Yeah. Which is, one, I was kind of struck at how much he's actually not in the movie, right? He's not in 2/3 of the movie.
Yeah.
Less than 20 minutes of screen time.
Yeah. And so it's like, obviously he has a huge presence in the movie and the memory of it, I think. But thinking about their relationship as characters in the movie, I also got this kind of, not to put on tinfoil hat, but like I hadn't realized that like there's a potential that his character is actually his father, which I hadn't really considered. I kind of just thought of him as like a guy in the neighborhood. But obviously they have some history, right? The film's really good and adept at not exploring moments that you think it would.
Yeah.
Right. Like you don't see Chiron in prison become black, right? Like you don't see those.
You don't see him dying on screen.
Exactly,
It's like after his funeral, and that's like all that we get.
And so there, it led me to believe a little bit of like, oh, okay, like there is a potential, right? Like she's a user, He's a dealer.
Yeah.
They obviously know each other in some way.
Right. Yeah. There's a lot of implied history.
Yes. Yeah.
Not just there, but throughout, where the movie's really trusting you in a way that is extremely refreshing.
Yeah. For sure. That's
It's always moving forward. It never, like, when a character you can tell is thinking of a specific moment, it doesn't have like a reverby audio of that moment playing.
Yes.
Non-diegetically. It's all good. Thinking about the craft too, specifically the two scenes you mentioned when they're play fighting, when in the little section, you said triptych. That was the word I was trying to think of before when I said trimester. And then on the beach scene with Sharon, the sound design is incredible too. And they do like a really clever thing that's like, oh, that was almost showing off, where in the Sharon on the beach section, they're talking about how when a breeze comes through and it's just perfect and everything else goes silent and you can like almost hear your heartbeat. It's like, oh, they actually are evoking that moment multiple times throughout the movie with dialogue or other sounds dropping out and you just hearing just the breathing.
Yeah, it's the space of innocence of the movie.
Yeah.
In terms of the melodrama, every melodrama has that begins and ends in a place of innocence, right? That beach is, the beach, but also like, the heartbeat, right? Like his sense, he is so like, as a character, part of what I took away too is like he is so embedded in himself as like a necessity, right? As in order to keep himself safe.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I took away this watch with his relationship with his mom, right? There's no safety there whatsoever. And so I kind of found those like that beach and what you were mentioning, the sound design of that, really interesting. I also love the soundtrack of it too. It's a great soundtrack.
Yeah. I was listening to it. I was like, this sounds really familiar. And then it's Nicholas Britell who did Succession. I was like, oh yeah, it sounds like Succession.
Yeah. But I mean, just like the original soundtrack, but also the song choices too.
Yeah. Things score, but the actual song choices are great. In it
yeah.
Too,
I totally agree.
Really of a time too. It starts with that song that's also the start of
Kendrick
to Pimp a Butterfly. Yep. So put me right back in that exact like moment in time and space. Really incredible movie, which is what I say when I'm vamping and can't remember my spot. It's just good. It's just good stuff. The performances are great. You mentioned his mother, played by Naomie Harris. She's amazing in this.
Amazing.
Coming into it, not having watched it fully before, knowing Mahershala Ali, obviously, when it gets nominated, I think for 8 Academy Awards, wins Best Pictures, Adapted Screenplay, and Supporting Actor for Mahershala Ali. So I didn't really know how much Naomie Harris would be sort of the through line for the character and his development, and then also how good she is in that role. It's sort of amazing.
I would also like to see like a list of time in movies versus like best supporting actor wins, and I wonder if this takes the cake of like the shortest in a movie but having like the largest impact.
Oh yeah,
just like the amount of time he's like not in the movie is like really interesting for him to like go on to win as well.
In one of the film classes I took, we watched Midnight Cowboy, which not for actor but had, I think still, but at the time, the least screen time for a Best Supporting win.
Oh, really?
Best Supporting Actress. She's in like 5 minutes of the movie. Something like that.
Interesting.
And then, not that he won, but Judd Hirsch for Fabelmans was only on screen for what, like 8 minutes or something? And got that nom over Paul Dano, which, okay. Did he need it?
Which is also like, maybe that was some meta, with the Fabelmans, Paul Dano once again getting passed over by someone,
Cooked by someone else. And Seth Rogen laughing in the background. Anyway, can't get too far down the Fabelmans hole.
Yeah, sorry.
Always talking. No, it's my fault. Always talking about Fabelmans in a tangent on this podcast. I don't know if this is even the best way to divvy up the movie or consider it, but is there any of the 3 parts that is particularly strong or meaningful to either of you?
I thought the Chiron section was probably like the most meaningful for me. I think just like, I don't know how like personal these podcast episodes also tend to be as well. So, you know, I don't want to like change it into like something that it's not.
I'll join in eventually.
Do you?
Obviously, like I could not be more different from the character. I'm, you know, a straight white man, but I also just think like the feeling of like being bullied and like the feeling of like not fitting in and not like realizing like where you stand, especially like in these like high school years. I think that was really like meaningful to me. And then like this kind of like righteous anger that like comes across screen, like, you know, like this, he's so hurt from like Kevin, you know, punching him and beating him up, and that he just, you know, takes the chair and he just hits, you know, his tormentor, and like this big kind of catharsis that like leads him down like a different path of life. I was like, as much as I love like the Black chapter and I love like the Little chapter, I think like this to me felt like we are seeing who he is in a way that we're seeing the outcome of it in Black and like the precursor in Little. You know, it's like Chiron is like who he is, and you know, like what's in a name too is like we can go into the one chapter where it's like his real name is like the chapter that has the most meaningful impact in his life as well.
I feel similarly. The sequence, the way it's shot when he's going and ends up smacking the guy with the chair.
Holding my breath like the whole time.
Yeah,
too.
and he goes through so many doors that you're like, oh God, where is
he going?
Where is he going? What's he going to do?
Yeah.
So many opportunities. Like, you know, this isn't going to end well for him, whatever he's doing. And he has so many like points where he could stop.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so many, it's like, I mean, what we already talked about, but in that section specifically, because I have a different section that I love, but I do love that section where when the bully is kind of picking who's going to beat up Chiron, and that camera work is incredible. The spinning,
how it's like kind of spinning. Yeah.
It's so menacing and so deliberate.
And like, cause the audience knows like who he's going to be like, but it's like this anticipation of like waiting for it to like find him and like to show him on screen.
And then when the principal is talking to Chiron about asking who did it, the sound design in that is great.
It's great. Yeah, that's the other moment I'm thinking of where the phone it just goes down, and you can hear her in the background saying like, "I want to respect your struggle."
Yeah, and she sucks so much.
And he's just like, he just is like, you can't help me.
And then like the dialogue literally just like fades out, you know, where it's like, and he like makes this decision.
Losing his breath.
But also like it as a viewer, I think those are the moments that like you hold on to, because you're experiencing what he's experiencing in that moment. Like you are also tuning her out. Yeah. And see all the kind of failures. I on that note, like I love the first section. And particularly because, you know, personal, don't have a great relationship with my mom. Feel like she was, you know, certainly not a drug addict, but you know, had addictive personality traits. And I feel like that section, you know, and I was also somebody who I think as a result looked towards mentors all the time. Right. So yeah, I'm very different than the character. Also a straight white man, talking about a movie during Pride Month. Like I appreciate having the opportunity to do so.
We've tried to avoid, as at work we say manels. It's when we're putting a panel together and like, oh, it's all white guys again. Yeah. Oh, we gotta avoid that.
But manels, I do feel like, you know, to the film's credit, like it is, you know, it is so able to speak to so many different people on so many different levels, because they're human experiences, and it's not pulling punches in telling those experiences. And so I think for me, the first section, you know, first of all, I think whoever the actor is that played Little did an amazing job. Yeah. Like he anchors that section so well. Yeah. And so,
and that kid's like 11 when he films this or whatever.
It's unreal.
It's really incredible.
And so like kind of seeing how like things I noted, right? Like how reserved he is, how in himself he is. Yeah. And you know, how much that kid is able to communicate with his eyes in that section. But also that moment of kind of when his mother's yelling at him, you know, the "don't look at me," which you kind of is revealed later what she's actually saying. Like obviously you could read her lips and things like that. But that just is like such a moment that I feel like,
he almost has like the Kubrick stare going on there too, you know, where it's like his eyes are like down, you know, he looks like almost like menacing for like a child to like,
well, he is right?
have so much hate towards his mom, you know, in like the previous scene, he's having dinner. He's like, I hate her, you know, or maybe maybe it's after.
Yeah.
But he tells
It's
Juan
after.
and
Yeah,
Teresa
that's
that he hates
I think
her.
the last sequence of the little section.
Yeah, where they have, which is arguably probably my favorite scene in the movie when he asks him, what's the F slur,
Yeah.
and gosh, I see every time I see that clip on Twitter, it's like I get choked up, because
the
it's just
response
so
to that
good.
is like
yeah, that kid's incredible. It's
Yeah.
and that's Alex Hibbert is the child version of Sharon. It's good shit.
Yeah,
I also love the third section. If I were going to rank them,
Yeah, none of them are
it's
bad.
it's
No,
like it's
great.
tough to be like one,
But I think
two.
for me-
This is all first blush for me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, the last one's sort of just like when I'm watching a movie and I'm really vibing with it, I start to get almost not worried, but I start to get like some piece of anxiety of just like, is it going to stick the landing?
yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
The, so the last bit being so in the triptych structure, knowing like, okay, well, this is it. What's the final statement here? Or are they going to stick it? So I always like a little tighter in there, but on a rewatch, I feel differently.
It's my favorite line in the movie too. It's that Bob Marley shit. It's like so good.
Yeah.
Because it just sums up the kind of like the
Yeah.
what the philosophy that the movie is kind of espousing to the hope of the movie, right? Like that is a life is what you're hoping for, right?
Yeah.
Great.
As far as performances go, we've named pretty much everyone besides Janelle Monáe. Even though I think we all agree we don't like Glass Onion as much as Knives Out. I think she's good in it.
She's great in Glass Onion,
Yeah,
but
she's
the
great
movie
in
kind
it.
of sucks.
Yes, she
Yes.
is. Yeah.
It's not her fault.
No, not at all.
She's wonderful in this too. And I don't know. She's a pretty talented person. Not sure what else if she has any movies coming out soon, but
I think she
Dude,
was
back
also
up.
in Barry Jenkins Underground Railroad. I've not seen it.
I haven't
I've
seen
not
it either.
seen it.
Apparently,
I
it's
believe-
really good.
Oh yeah, I really want to see it. I've seen If Beale Street Could Talk, which is also great.
Yeah. It's also great. This is I listened to contemporaneous interview with him that was between it being nominated for 8 Academy Awards, but before the Academy Awards happened. After I watched it today, and he was talking about like, oh yeah, I don't know if you've read the book Underground Railroad, but I'm working on an adaptation of that. And I've got some other stuff like batting around. And one of those things obviously was If Beale Street Could Talk. He talked about James Baldwin a lot before that too. And then one other thing he said was that Moonlight's only his second feature, but it had come so long. His first feature was in 2008 that he said it felt like his first feature, and he's making it all with friends from film school. And I mean, it's just so assured in everything he's doing in this movie that it's sort of incredible that he feels like this was his first movie, and like what a place to freaking start.
She was not in Underground Railroad. She was in the show Antebellum.
Right.
Oh,
yes.
Sorry. And then also Harriet. So, but yeah.
In your defense, she's in that area.
Yeah, she's worked with him a lot.
played in
And
that,
she's, I just remember listening to the WTF podcast with her. And I think it was around the same time the Barry Jenkins one came out. So they got conflated. But
Makes sense.
Thinking too of like this being like, although it's like his second film, it reminds me of like that Orson Welles quote when he's doing Citizen Kane, and he's like, we didn't know what rules were there, so we
I
like
didn't know I couldn't do that.
yeah,
essentially,
and so it almost feels like that, where it's like you can do whatever you want because you don't know what you're not supposed to do, and it's like almost like the more knowledge that you have is kind of detrimental to your craft in that sense.
Absolutely. That's she doesn't have any other credited movie roles even in post-production right now, or pre-production, and in any kind of production. She doesn't right now. Hope she does soon. But yeah, no, you're totally right. Not knowing what you can't do is a big part of creation.
Yeah. And you just like you make it work, right?
Yeah.
You
And that's why
figure
there's
it out.
ceilings in films now, because there wasn't before Citizen Kane.
Oh wow! I didn't know.
I never saw ceilings before, but they put the camera under the
They cut
floorboards
the
to
floor,
point up.
yeah.
Oh wow! And
There's,
oh my god! There's a ceiling there.
yeah.
We'll
Verisimilitude.
cut this, but
Oh god!
the 4K package from Criterion of Citizen Kane has multiple commentaries on it. And
Oh, really?
last time I watched Citizen Kane, I did it with the Roger Ebert commentary.
Oh man,
And it's fucking fascinating.
That's great. We need to bring back commentary tracks as well.
He's too much on Pauline Kael's side in her like crazy thing that she wrote to discredit Orson Welles' contributions to the screenplay. Raising Cain or whatever. The name of her book-length essay about how much Orson Welles sucks is. I didn't even know about this, so I'm new. Aside from that, it's really interesting, and he does point out like, oh yeah, in this shot, this is like the reason this was so revolutionary is no one ever had seen what they're showing you happen before, and so it's good to contextualize because you're looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, this is what movies look like, and this is how movies feel in the pace before. He's like, you have to remember, nothing had ever sounded like this before that anyone had ever seen on screen.
Yeah. I tell my friends who like, they're like, why is it so well known? I was like, imagine not seeing any movie, you know? It's like when you read, it's like the joke about Hamlet. It's like, oh, I liked Hamlet, but it was full of cliches. You know, it's like, you know, it's you know, it's the first time you're watching something like that. It's tough to discount it. So
experience watching Double Indemnity in a film class.
Love it.
Shout out Wilder.
Yeah, fucking love Wilder. We haven't done any. Yeah, we've never done Wilder on the podcast before.
Have you guys seen The Apartment?
So yeah,
have you seen it?
No.
Ooh, we should do The Apartment.
I think there's 4 of his movies that I absolutely love and think are amazing. I love Sunset Boulevard.
Yep. Double Indemnity, Sunset.
Some Like It Hot.
The Apartment.
Right?
Some Like It Hot.
Yeah, those are the 4 for me.
Yeah.
And he has others.
Some Like It has that crazy restaurant scene, right? I know we're like
we'll do a Some Like It Hot month, and
where it's like the like cameras like moving through the restaurant, or am I thinking of it?
You're thinking of Goodfellas.
Oh yeah, I was definitely thinking of Goodfellas.
Thinking of the Copa scene. Yeah, some guy brings a table out for the pillow.
Yeah. Joe Pesci's there for some reason. I think too.
You're correct.
Yeah. Okay. I think something too, like, and I'm not trying to.
This is tangents are
us.
It's fine.
But something I wanted to bring up too is, my, a little shout out to me in the past. My thesis was on masculinity, and so I think like a lot of films, like I'm always kind of thinking about like how masculinity is handled. So I have like a couple quick notes too that I just wanted to hear you guys' thoughts on. During the little section during the fight, that's like Kevin says to him, I know you wasn't soft, like after like their fight, and then I think it's interesting too that in the black section, now Chiron is like this idea of masculinity that he had growing up. He even has the line, I built myself hard. And Kevin is really disappointed in him for, selling drugs and like having this life. But the masculinity that he was around at that age is what he's like looking up to, or he like does it to like protect himself. Because like clearly, he has this like moment of vulnerability from, the first person that he loves, and, he gets beat up by him. So he kind of changes his whole personality, and he models it after like these typical men. I said to my girlfriend, my fiance, like, she's just so jacked. Like, the scene you see him, like he's getting in bed, like the first time we see him, and you just see like, just how big and strong he is when, he's such a skinny kid. He's such a little kid. And now he's like this, I don't want to say menacing, but he's a very like powerful man. And I think that's like, a really interesting way of like showing how his psyche is like damaged and how he's like, his masculinity is like changed to reflect the harsh kind of world, like homophobic world that he lives in, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a thing that happens that the movie doesn't put so much of a fine point on, but like, again, trusting the audience and showing like, here's what happens. You know, you can trace every step of how he ended up here. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I don't even know that it's subversion, but how it sort of undercuts the sort of mask that he's built up by the second he reconnects with Kevin, he's back in the same personality mode that he was at last time they, spent any time together. Yeah.
Well, it's also like he learns how to lean into the quiet, reserved, right?
Yeah.
Like, but then you even see like the interaction he has with like the like when you go to Atlanta and you see him in Atlanta and he's driving in the car with the guy, the dealer that works, that sells for him. Mm-hmm. You kind of see the awkwardness of him as like a boss.
Yeah.
but he's made it work for him, right? And that's, I think, part of what it's
the joking about, oh, she's down here on the corner, like this girl, like trying to like be one of the guys, quote unquote. Yeah.
And then, quite literally, like, I think part of the brilliance of the movie is like, it's not spelling it out for you, but it also does give you a lot of visual representations of what the movie's saying. So the fronts, right, like, are a great example of that.
Yeah, literally fronts.
Literally fronts, right? Like, he's putting on a front, and there are literally fronts there, and it's so seamless.
Yeah,
I think, which is part of the genius of the movie.
Yeah, and Kevin literally calls him out on having dumb fronts,
and he has to take them out.
Yeah,
in order to kind of, eat what Kevin's making him, right? Yeah. Like he so it's just so seamless in some ways, like in and not holding your hand, but also giving you everything you need. Yeah. To kind of understand the depth that, of these kind of, whether it's the commentary on masculinity or, the kind of commentary on just like other life experiences, like regret, love, trauma, all those things. It's like, it's so, yeah.
I think it's interesting that you said that too, of like the food scene is like, food I think plays it's a huge role in the movie, but like the first scene he has, he goes in little, he's like eating with them, and
feeding
it's like,
him plays a big role in the movie. Yeah,
exactly. And then like the scene when he's Chiron and his mom's like, you need to find somewhere else to sleep tonight. She has that line, there's all love and all pride in this house, because he's like, his head's kind of down. He doesn't want to like talk to her. And it's like these people who love him are like feeding him.
They're trying to nourish him.
Yeah. Right? They're trying to like help him out. And then, I also think maybe this is a tinfoil hat moment, but the scene in the cafeteria, he's going to go seek out Kevin. Yeah. He's like walking there with his food to eat with this person after, their time together. And he sees, I forget his bully's name. He sees him there, and he goes sit somewhere else. And that's like kind of where this like split happens too. It's like, he almost wanted to continue this moment, but you see him actually eating with like the cafeteria workers. There's no one, he's physically alone. There's no one around him. Yeah.
And even just little things, like thinking about that now, like the bully taking the juice box from Kevin. Yeah. And then, that comes full circle at the end where he's kind of like sharing the wine with, like, Kevin and Black are sharing the wine together. It's so like, it's that level of art where, whether or not it's intentional or just happened to be what, like how the narrative was put together. Yeah. It hits on a kind of on all cylinders and kind of hums at a level where you just like are, for me, it's just like you're kind of in awe that like it kind of connects all in that way. Yeah. Upon reflection.
It just all hangs together so well. Yeah. And even just these things that I hadn't thought about until this conversation. And like, I'm sure if I watched it even one more time, a lot more would sort of spill out.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Going back to something that like I picked up this time that I maybe wasn't so focused on, because it is like overwhelming to watch in some ways, is like the repression that he has too, right? Like, obviously you watch it and you note the sexual repression, but also like the kind of, because you see a mixture of
the overall like personality repression.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you have those moments of like when he stays with Teresa as Chiron and he has the wet dream. Yeah. And like you almost, it's funny because it obviously is a coming of age story. And I'm not so sure though it's a coming out story, right? Because he's not come out to anybody except, the people trying to nourish him. Yeah. Right. And which I think is part of like the what is so somber and why it still strikes a melancholic note at the end, because like, he hasn't come out. Right. Yeah. And you could definitely see a world in which he doesn't when he leaves, and goes back to Atlanta. Yeah. And that's totally within the realm of the world that they've showed us. Mm. And, when I watched it with my wife this time, and I think it was the second time she's seen it, she's like, yeah, the ending is a lot sadder than I remember it being. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I think that's part of what is very like interesting about the movie. And I know that's like a stupid thing to say, but it what I brought up before we started recording of like the 5 aspects of melodrama, it's like kind of the false hope is one of the aspects of them, right? And that strikes such that chord, right? There, it ends on his false hopefulness. Where on first look, you're like, oh my God, thank God him and Kevin got back together. Like you're obviously rooting for him, right? Like you want, but you're like, come back down. And if you think of like the world that they've showed you, it's a harsh world. Mm-hmm. It's like, Chiron's world is not one in which he's going to like potentially can never come out. Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And even the line his mom has at the beginning when she's talking to Juan, when he's confronting her, where he's like, are you going to tell him why he's always getting bullied?
Yeah.
Like she knows, but it's like, they don't have like this moment of understanding, like where it's like, she clearly knows that her son's gay, but they don't have a conversation about it. At least,
well, she clearly calls him, the F slur too, right?
Yeah.
Which is part of why he's asking that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The scene where they reconnect in the black section, him and his mom, that was so from the interview, but behind the scenes stuff, that was the first time the actors had met, Naomie Harris and I forgot who plays Black, Trevante Rhodes had met, and it wasn't in the scene is set up in the screenplay as an apology, but it's not actually like the words aren't written for it. Mm-hmm. And it sort of came about Naomie Harris isn't actually a smoker, and so was IRL having trouble lighting the cigarette. And so between takes, Barry Jenkins told Trevante Rhodes, when she's having trouble lighting the cigarette, like grab it for her and do it for her. And then that's the first time those characters make like physical contact.
Which is also just such another like
nourishing
trope of, but it's also such a trope of melodramas, right? Like the romantic lighting 2 cigarettes and giving one, but it's like, and so the film's able to subvert some of those things because we're not in, 1950s America kind of wanting like a woman's film, right? Like we're not, this isn't Betty Davis or whomever. But the way it's like able to kind of still do those things, but I didn't know that. That's cool. Yeah. I found that scene and, I don't know. That's the one that still kind of confounds me a little bit. It feels like, I don't
know if she's at some sort of like halfway home or something.
I mean, she's in a rehab facility, right? She's working in a rehab facility.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like it's like a little, like I get the need for the apology in some ways, but it also feels like, I leave that feeling like, does he accept the apology or is she deserving of an apology? Right.
Yeah.
And there's like this moment he like reaches over and he dries her tears, but it's like dries her tears and then lights the cigarette. It's like, is that like it? Is this like their big, like, I don't forgive you, but like here, I'm still here. Like I'm your son, but like, I don't know if I forgive you, which I think is like,
yeah, I like that it doesn't put too much of a bow on their relationship that it's maybe not so much him accepting the apology as him sort of coming to terms with like, he's not going to be satisfied with this relationship ever, but he's content with it being at this place for now.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or at least he knows that he doesn't want to spend energy wanting more from this.
Yeah.
Which again, not a happy place to end.
Yeah.
But I think too, if like it had gone like the other way, it'd have like everything that have been built would have been kind of ruined. That's why I almost think like the ending, like the reuniting with Kevin is not happy. It's just like what it is,
It's needed.
Yeah.
It's needed. Like Black needs it. We need it as viewers, right? But it's also...
It's not happily ever after.
No. Yeah. It's also reminding you that like this is not, although it's necessary, it's not nourishing, right? Or it's not enough.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot of what the movie's like, I think about in some ways. Right. Like what it's, and it, something else too, what's in a name you brought up. Maybe we can get to that. Right. Like the kind of the idea of the movie of like, you got to choose a name, one day you're going to have to choose who you are.
Yeah.
Literally the only text that appears on screen during the movie. Right. Cause there's no title drop.
Yeah.
So it's probably important enough to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would,
I thought like, the story, like they're on the beach and he's telling him the story of how when he was in Cuba and he was dancing in the moonlight, and this old woman is calling him Blue, and so Little asks him, "Is Blue your name?" He's like, "No," like he makes his own name, like he chooses like who he's going to be, and like you said, you got to decide for yourself who you want to be. I think we got a little lightning and rain going,
thunder and lightning.
Yeah, I think it's so poignant that each time, and that obviously the name he chooses in Atlanta, like the person he chooses to be, is the name given to him by Kevin.
Yeah.
The fact that he doesn't like being called Little. He has like this violent reaction to it in the classroom, or like he's like upset. He's like, "Don't call me that." But he doesn't like being called Little. He's like trying to establish himself as like Chiron or who he wants to be. And then when he is this older man, he's going by a name given to him by somebody else, which I love that.
It is really good.
It's also kind of tragic though, right? Because like he's not chosen who he is.
No.
And he is so like it just speaks to the depth of how hurt he is, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That he's like, which is part of the movie, like it's unresolved. He's picked the name Kevin assigns to him, even though the last time he saw Kevin was when he was arrested, right?
Yeah.
And so there's something very tragic about it, and I'm not completely like, if I watch it, I'm just like, oh, he needs to still pick his own name, right? Like he doesn't, and that's what Kevin's kind of saying to him is like, he doesn't really have a life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And it's so funny you meant it's like he's leaving and he's when they're reuniting in the diner, and he's like, "Do you remember the last time that we like saw each other?" He's like, "Oh, I try not to think about that." But it's like, you clearly do think about it. Like you've built your identity off of the name he gave you. It's like, you might say that, you might act that, but like you're here in Miami now with him, trying to reconnect. And so it's like, clearly he's like this huge influence, but he doesn't know who he is, and
it is tragic. But it's also, he's not chosen his own name, but he's choosing the name that connects him to the period, however short it was, where not that he even ever embraced who he was, but that he was extremely briefly perhaps confronting who he was a little bit.
Yeah.
For like the only time, and that name sort of connects him to that. But yeah, he's still not choosing his own name.
Oh,
it's so deep.
Also, I did think about going back to the masculinity point.
Yeah,
like when he's in the car, when he's driving from Atlanta to the restaurant, and it's like the song, the classic man playing over and over again, right? It's like, it's again, one of those moments where it's like, it's so obvious without being obvious, which I think is really testament to Barry Jenkins and like his direction of the movie, because there are many places in this movie where it can become, too obvious.
Yeah.
And almost like falter for that.
It works, though.
But it works. It's great.
And that one comes up in the interview I was listening to, and he's talking about how they chopped and screwed it and sort of slowed down. It's sort of distorted.
Yeah. The Erykah Badu song that they sort of slow down.
It's just, it's really smart without hitting you over the head with how smart it thinks it is.
Yeah.
Which is hard to do both.
Yeah.
What else you got?
I have some more. I mean, I don't know how much more time we have.
Let's do it.
Speaking of like slow, there was a lot of moments where it was, I don't want to say like quite slow motion, but where it's slow, time has been slowed down. It almost feels like these things are like happening, like little by little, it's like very ethereal almost. I think, the moment when he's entering the house as Little, and, he's all behind him is like this blinding white light. He's going in and, he's kind of confronting his mom during this scene. And there's a few other moments like that where it's like things are like moving so slowly. And then, it's like it goes back to normal time. And I don't really know if I have a point other than
it's cool.
It's cool. And I noticed it. And
well, I think what's great about it in those moments is that they're not necessarily extremely pivotal moments, right?
Yeah.
Like they're not, sometimes they are, you know what I mean? But sometimes they're just like what the film's choosing to show, right? And it's deliberateness in choosing to show, not show him in prison becoming black, or to not show him being bullied from age whatever, 10 to age 16, 17,
Yeah.
18 or something like
Yeah.
that. Right. But yeah.
I'm trying to find the specific moment, but you mentioned like an ethereal sort of vibe.
Yeah.
Vibe's the wrong word. Oh man, I almost made the whole episode without saying vibe instead,
We'll cut it.
instead
Vibe
of
check.
tone
Vibe
or
check.
mood. There's a scene that Barry Jenkins says is his favorite where I think it's when Naomie Harris is yelling at him, which happens without audio the first time, and then later in a dream sequence, her walking into the frame in reverse and then doing that. I think it's filmed at like 48 frames per second.
Oh, really?
Which I don't know if that necessarily translated to me watching it on my, desktop monitor from Amazon, but definitely contributes to something just sort of unnatural or ethereal about that sequence as well.
And the pinkness of the room
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
This, like, what was that? Like, what is like this light,
I mean, it's Miami, baby. It's it feels
They
like,
got
I mean,
that,
it's
like,
great.
Kramer thing out the
The
window.
palette of the movie is
in the
very
air, the night is
Miami.
playing,
Yeah.
Yeah, I made a note about the I said they were purple, but maybe they're pink.
Magenta. Can we settle on magenta?
Let's settle on magenta. We don't want to argue. I was struck by that, and I love like her turn, how she's like turned. Her whole body's almost like perpendicular to him, and it's just her head. That's like, look, I'm like doing it like people can see me on the podcast.
I think this is on video.
Just
Oh, it's all on video. Good.
Yeah, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's very
All
small
the-
cameras.
Oh yeah.
That's that smoke
I know,
alarm.
I
We
see
should get
it
an
now.
owl like they have
Oh,
at
God.
SPH.
They're only like
Hell yeah.
$1,500.
Are they really? Oh,
Yeah,
my God.
they're really
But like
expensive.
that moment where she's like, she's like totally dismissing him and going into like this euphoria, like this, like, oh, this beautiful pink room, escaping like kind of the squalor of where they live to go, to this brightly magenta room. So yeah.
Yeah.
Reminds me of the 5 gum color that they don't make that flavor anymore, but it was really good.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're
We were
saying
all
that's
thinking
how,
it.
That's how it feels to chew
That
five
is
gum?
how it feels. I hope.
It's engaging all five senses.
Definitely hope not.
Jesus Christ.
Oh my gosh.
Any final thoughts before we get to ratings for Moonlight?
I was very glad that we could watch this, and I felt very happy to come to discuss it here, because it's just like a beautiful and kind of haunting portrait of masculinity. Like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but this is a movie that definitely bounces around in your head for a long time afterwards, and I just love it, and I love each segment so much, and I love how it's just works that way, and everything. And I could do 5 out of 5.
Hold on.
Sorry.
Because there's more rules.
Whoa.
Oh, uh-oh.
Okay.
Sorry.
On a scale of 5, going up by halves, on any scale aside from stars, what would you give Moonlight?
I'll pick 5. I'm not rated it yet, but crowns. A little crown on
yeah,
the
while
hood
he's
of the
driving.
car. It's a good school.
school. The Crown School.
I could do 5 white t-shirts out of 5.
There you go.
I don't think anyone's ever looked as good in a white t-shirt, or in a fun polo. I wore a polo today because of Mahershala and that. So yeah, I'll do 5 white t-shirts out of 5.
Nice. I'm trying to think. I don't want to go too vulgar. It feels inappropriate for this. So I'll just say 5 grains of sand out of 5 for this one.
So final thoughts for me.
Yeah.
So going back to when I was in graduate school, I went to Syracuse. It was in a PhD program for film studies. I had this professor. I'm not going to name him, but he was a annoying guy. I TA'd for him. He used to finish his hummus during our TA meetings post teaching with his finger.
Yeah, okay.
And eat it
my
in front of us.
gosh.
Just shout out.
Gross.
Shout out to eating with your fingers in front of people that are your TAs. But I took a melodrama class with him, right? And so that's why I talked a little bit about revisiting some of the stuff I read about that class. And he was hellbent and convinced that we were all going to cry at one of these movies, right? That we watched in the class. And we watched admittedly very good movies, but I'm not a housewife in the 1950s that is repressed by my husband, right? So, we watched oh God, what did we watch? I'm blanking now. Written on the Wind or now Voyager and things like that. And then we finished with watching what's Tom Ford's movie with Julianne Moore and Colin Firth.
A Serious Man? Or am I thinking of a different one?
Serious Man is Coen Brothers. Is it A Simple Man?
I know there's a man in there.
It's one of the mans.
So we watched that movie, which he hated, which I really loved. And then we watched Brokeback Mountain, which I had not seen before. But I didn't cry at any of the movies, right? Like I wasn't
Single Man.
a single man. There you go. I wasn't brought to that point. I could safely say that this is like a melodrama, Moonlight, where I cried at the end of the movie, right? I feel like it's not that I'm not somebody that cries. I cry a lot, but like
Huge cry
I
over
feel
here.
like it's something that art doesn't necessarily take me to that place often, or movies don't.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a testament to the movie. And so I'll give it 5 tears out of 5.
Oh,
good.
beautiful.
It's good.
Loved it.
It's a good one. So the connective tissue for Pride Month. This was sort of like a by committee decision on the questions, but ultimately credit probably mostly to Aquiel on the But I'm a Cheerleader episode. The questions are, what was the first gay movie you watched?
Oh.
And then if you can remember your earliest celebrity crush.
Oh, these are good.
And it was in service of a plot point in But I'm a Cheerleader is them having to define what their root is. And so
The first explicitly gay movie, or like the movie with like gay subtext?
we've done, it's been both. Yeah,
Okay.
there's been both options
Let
for
me
sure.
think then.
And then we're finding a lot like, oh yeah, there wasn't any, like fun movies that featured gay characters until very recently. Most of them were like dramas about AIDS.
How horrible it is.
Yeah.
To be
Yeah.
like oppressed by society.
Yeah. Most of them are about oppression, and they still are, but there's comedies now too.
Yeah.
I know there was Birdcage growing up. Birdcage might have been one of
Birdcage
the
did
first
come
ones.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, not that if it's come up already, you can still take it if it's your answer.
I don't think
obviously.
Birdcage was my answer. I would say Batman and Robin,
That's a really good
that is a
one.
really
which also dovetails with Alicia Silverstone being my first crush.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Oh.
God, yeah, that guy just loved showing Batman's ass in
Yeah.
close-ups.
Yeah. Shout out to Michael Schumacher.
Yeah.
Lost Boys forever.
Yeah.
Not seen it.
Joel.
What?
No.
Joel Schumacher. Sorry.
Michael's the race car driver?
I have no idea. Maybe Joel Schumacher. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
Joel,
No.
if you're listening.
I would say, I don't know. I think like the Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes. I think like that had like a lot of like good gay subtext that like
A lot of speed ramping.
yeah. I love that movie. And so yeah, I think when I watched it, I think it felt like almost like like masculinity. Like there's like a lot of tender masculinity in that movie that I really liked. That like without seeming like a Sherlock, the BBC TV show that I don't care for. Where it felt like kind of queer baiting almost in that sense. This felt like these two characters who like love each other, and I would say that. Yeah.
That's RDJ and is Jude Law?
Jude Law.
Watson
Jude
in
Law.
that one?
Yeah.
Fantastic in that movie.
Bentley, what was your first queer movie that you saw? And
It was sort of hard to define because there's like, there wasn't movies made for people who were my age when they were coming out. Like I didn't see Birdcage in the 90s. I only saw it for the first time a few years ago. On the But I'm a Cheerleader episode, I think we sort of revolved around maybe Rent, like the film adaptation of Rent, maybe.
when did that come out?
2005, I think.
Yeah.
So I would have been 14. It's probably around
No
there.
one's having
I don't
fun
know,
in
it's
that
tough.
movie. Compared
No one's
to,
having fun,
compared
and there
to
is
the-
characters dying from AIDS still, but there's songs.
I think compared to like the theatrical play or the musical, it's like the film is not as good, but yeah. That's a good one. That's a really solid
And
one.
who was the first crush?
Yeah.
Tried to come up with a different one every time. My first pick was Kirsten Dunst specifically in Bring It On.
I don't think I know what she looks like in that.
Oh, really? She's a cheerleader. Like,
Yeah, which related to But I'm a Cheerleader.
Uh-huh.
And I can't remember what I said last episode because it hasn't come out yet. But I think I tried to pick a different one in that one. Might have said Emma Stone.
I must. Oh yeah.
Not that it's necessarily earliest, but it bears repeating. It comes up a lot.
Interesting. Wow. Do you like La La Land? Yeah.
Oh, we get tied in. Look at that.
Yeah, that would tie this together.
And I watched that happen live.
Same. I did watch that.
I should have given 5 stars to La La Land and then been like, wait a minute. That would have been such a good bit.
We haven't been talking about La La Land.
Yeah.
This whole time. I thought
also
that was
watched that,
one of, up until the slap, that was like the Oscar moment. And now, like Will Smith.
Although I will, low-key great Oscar moment was this year when Al Pacino just came out and was just like,
My eyes see Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
That's great.
They have some octogenarian with no help introducing Best Picture every year.
I'm surprised he didn't dash in a hoo-ha for good measure there.
Oh, I was about to do
see
it.
Oppenheimer. What a weird way to do it. And then Oppenheimer's producers like, oh, we go up then? Okay.
Yeah.
Shout
Oh
out.
my gosh.
Pacino.
Pacino.
Great.
That was a wild moment.
They got to start doing like, it's the 15th anniversary of a movie and we have a star here, not the 50th.
Yeah.
They're just too old.
They should have the older people read out the in memoriam, just like.
Yeah. I still feel bad that Jimmy Kimmel blamed Warren Beatty live because it's not his. It was Faye Dunaway that read it.
Oh, yeah, because he kind of like held it.
Yeah, because Warren's like looking at it, sees it's the wrong thing. Faye Dunaway says La La Land, gets the fuck out of there. Warren Beatty sticks around to be like, look at what happened. And then Jimmy Kimmel goes, Warren, what did you do?
Hot take. I think they should get even older people to announce those.
I mean, it's like keeps people interested.
But also, like,
they had Kirk Douglas do something like minutes before he died a few years ago.
If you average Pacino and his girlfriend and our wife's age,
37,
then he's really young.
Yeah,
he's young.
Exactly.
It's
It's like Bill Belichick's new girlfriend, unrelated to film, and we don't need to talk about that on a movie.
I've talked about this on the podcast before, but it's like with Pacino, someone who's been around that long, it's like, oh, how do you pick what the first line of the obituary is when he eventually goes? If you look at his Wikipedia. I know, knock on wood. Unfortunately, this is from Wayfair, so I don't think it's wood.
Oh, wow. He's dead tomorrow.
Oh, this is probably from Wayfair.
That's probably not wood either.
No. Yeah, knock on particle board. And there is, because of that, one of the first lines, there's a lot of commas on his Wikipedia page, is one of history's oldest fathers. Just like,
God.
What a title.
That's an amazing thing.
And it's true. It's like going back to people in the Bible, Al Pacino's like, 17th oldest father on record.
Wow.
Him and De Niro. De Niro has a kid, just had a kid too, right?
Yeah. The Pacino age gap is a lot bigger though.
Yeah.
So, and I think he's older than De Niro by a little.
Okay.
So,
that's crazy.
And he was way older than his character in the
Wait. De Niro is Pacino's father though in Godfather Part 2.
Right. Yeah. It's weird. But he's his older boss.
Solid.
Is that a documentary?
So it's tough,
That's true. Yeah.
You know what's it's Heat. As the moderator of Heat on Reddit, which is a fun fact, please join r/Heat 1995, please. That I think is a very homoerotic movie as well.
It is.
It's
a throuple too.
One of my favorites. Yeah.
I think next month is going to be horror. If you want to break the egg on some of those.
Hell yeah.
Break the egg.
Boy.
Let's do it. Let's do it because Brady's seen none of those.
It's going
I've
to
never
be
seen Alien. So
You've never seen what?
Alien all the way. Oh, okay.
We've already done Alien and Aliens, but if you want to do Alien 3, we could.
David Fincher.
Because we could do Prometheus also, because my idea for next month is to do, a year or two ago did Halloween in June. And this time I'm going to, I think, do the full title of the month will be Halloween in June Part 2, July. And it'll be exclusive.
I like that.
It'll be all little loved or bizarre sequels to horror movies we've already done.
Oh, yeah.
Like
Season of the Witch.
Like Jaws 2.
Specifically thinking of Season of the Witch.
Love that movie.
We'll pick a Jason movie, probably Jason X because he's in space.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Can we do Freddy versus Jason? When I was a kid, that seemed really cool.
Jason X is really good though.
All right. I've not seen any of them. So.
Lep in the Hood? Leprechaun in the Hood?
We haven't done a Leprechaun movie before.
Jaws 2? Jaws 2?
I was thinking Jaws 3D or Jaws 4 The Revenge.
I've not seen this, so that works.
The revenge in question is the sharks. He's mad that the Brody family keeps killing His friends?
Which Hellraiser are we choosing?
Wow.
Because there's a lot.
I've not done a Hellraiser before.
There's a lot of Hellraisers.
That's the problem. So if it's only ones we've done before, we could do Alien 3, though.
You should do Hellraiser for Pride Month.
If you've not seen all the Fincher movies and you want to see Alien 3.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few. So
I like Alien 3 a lot, actually.
Yeah, could do
we got a lot of good options.
I recently listened to the author William Gibson's audiobook version of a screenplay he wrote for Alien 3 that got unproduced. That was pretty good. Very different from the actual
Neuromancer
Alien 3.
author, right?
Yes. I love Neuromancer.
Yeah, it's great. Very Cyberpunk 2077. Played the game.
Oh yeah.
Very much. It's like very inspired.
Extremely ripped off.
Yeah.
Ripping off William.
Yeah. I loved it. And you got Keanu in there.
Just straight up the name of the city is. I know the game is based on a
board game,
pen and paper from like the 90s or whatever. So it's
one
all
played that.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Good for that guy. So this is all stuff we can talk about off pod. Like I said, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
We'll do another one soon. Thanks everybody. You can find ourselves on linktr.ee/late to the movies, and we'll see you next time.